sophomore album from the Lemon Twigs is a concept album about a chimpanzee. I don't think that the animal theme is in any way inspired by Doja Cat's Moo Song, which is about a cow, but who's to say it isn't, you know? And this concept is focusing on this chimpanzee who has been raised by humans and goes through, I guess, a normal, ordinary life, except they're a monkey instead. And this story is told in this very theatrical, gargantuan, epic, over-the-top musical type way. It essentially feels like just watching a musical about this chimpanzee going through life, and the Lemon Twigs play these really silly at times instrumentals, these really over-the-top cheesy sounding songs as well. Not necessarily a bad thing. I kind of like the idea of the sound of this album, you know. I think the sort of ridiculous sounds and how it sort of feels like I am watching a film makes me sucked into this story a little bit more than I would have if it was pretty plain indie rock instrumentals or garage rock instrumentals. And if you think that this all sounds cool and impressive so far, then do take into account that they recorded all of this in their basement. Like, they got all of this just done in a freaking basement. Like, how? Why? How? So yeah, a young duo working on this theatre piece in their basement turns out pretty good, I must say. I don't think it comes out in the way that it could have done, but when you take into account that, you know, they had limited resources and stuff like that, what they ended up coming out with is pretty good for what it is. There are some pretty standout flaws though, I must admit. I mean, this album really tries its best on being as epic as it can be with the sounds, but the way it jumps around from track to track makes it sound quite messy and unfocused. I'm sure that is what they're going for anyway, but some tracks really pale in comparison to others in terms of sound. Like, they have some really epic, like, orchestral moments on one song, and then maybe the next one they change it up completely stylistically and it just feels like I think a comparison to Foxygen is very apt for the Lemon Twigs here. I mean, Take the Kids Off Broadway, and especially their last album, Hang, which is easily their best in my opinion, like, had such a refined sound and went for very similar adventurous things in the music, and it worked so well. Whereas the Lemon Twigs just haven't got that yet, you know. They're jumping around in different sounds, the recording quality isn't always as crisp as it should be, and then on some tracks it sounds better, so it's kind of like you're getting a mismatch of like a demo song and then an actual song right after it. It's a bit odd for me. Certainly takes me out of the element a little bit throughout, I must say. It just sounds really unfocused throughout, to be honest. And again, I'm sure if this was all recorded with a bigger budget in a better area instead of a basement, like, we could have had a great album here, but just all of those things come through and shine in obvious ways, to be honest. But the styles they do play with on this album do work at times. Like, there's this like really epic glam rock feel to this album too, which is something I don't particularly like. But in terms of like modern new wave glam rock artists like Ron Gallo and Kyle Craft, who I reviewed previously on this channel, like, those kind of sounds working in on this album really works in the favour of the Lemon Twigs, I must say. There's so much talent here, like, in terms of stylistic musical playing throughout this album, but like, you know, like I've already said, it gets a bit messy at times and stuff like that, but the overall like idea is there. In terms of storytelling though, I can't really fault the Lemon Twigs and the songwriter of this album, because he does come through with some really cool ideas. You know, there's one track where he's talking about how you know, his dad is telling the monkey how he was adopted and, you know, where he came from and stuff like that. There are some cool occasional jokes that get thrown in, I guess, in reference to being a monkey. Bit on the nose, but, you know, it's worth it for what it is. I can't help but feel like I need to pinpoint some tracks though that don't really follow the narrative or don't really feel like they're part of the story. Like on the second track of this album, the student becomes a teacher, the teacher becomes a principal, the principal dies, everybody cries. Like I can't help but just think, is this relevant to the story in any kind of way? Because I don't see it. And if it is, then why isn't it being told in a more potent way that attaches itself to the chimpanzee? Like this could just be about any kid in a school where this, you know, the friggin' student, you know, becomes a teacher and then becomes a principal. Like that could happen in any small town where there's only one school. Like I don't really feel it has any sort of relevance to this story in any kind of way. But then we do have great songs like Born Wrong, which is focusing on how the chimpanzees come to realization of how, like, you know, the dad isn't actually their dad and that sort of thing. Very similar to sort of like the film Lion, I guess, you know, with the guy that comes from an Asian country, then gets adopted, and then he actually wants to find out who his parents really were. That kind of stuff has a really strong feel to it, and when this album hits it, it hits it well. But I just think it doesn't stay that way the whole way through, you know? But yeah, I do think that's why often concepts can be a little overrated in albums, to be honest, because like you've really got to hit it home. Like it's got to be just top notch for it to be a classic concept album. If not, it ends up just falling apart, to be honest. But I really do appreciate what they went for here. I mean, even though it didn't fully hit the landing, like it certainly got really high at points. Just, you know, considering the budget and stuff like that, they're really young. They're younger than me, and they can craft something pretty cool here, so I appreciate it. Overall, I think it's a 6 out of 10. I do highly recommend this album, though. I think a lot of people could end up loving this, especially the styles and the music on this thing. I'd also recommend Foxygen's last album if you never listened to that too, because I think that just does this better. But for the concept and stuff like that, I think you should try jumping into this album with fresh ears. And yeah, let me know what you think if you have heard it, though. And what you think of this album. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Have a good day. Yeah, have a good day.